Good day, chess world. So today we continue on the wonderful exploration of the book Logical Chess Move by Move. And this game we're going to be look at is a game from Pillsbury, played in Paris 1900 against Marco. And Pillsbury was a fascinating chess character from America. He came onto the chess scene quite like a lightning strike, almost like Icarus, rising so very, very quickly. And he's most famous for his spectacular debut on the Super Tournament stage in the chess world in 1895, where he won his first ever Super Tournament, ending ahead of world champions Steinitz, Lasker, an absolutely spectacular result. And Pillsbury, of course, is also famous for his wonderful mental feats of playing blindfold simultaneouses while playing checkers, blindfolded, and card games at the same time. So he was a spectacular calculator with wonderful vision. And we're going to see that in this game. This is actually one of the very best games in the entire book, demonstrating how to attack with a secure center. We're going to see how Pillsbury brings every piece to attack the opponent's kingside. And it is all because he has a wonderful, secure control of the center. That center becomes that platform for success. So let's jump in. Pillsbury starts with a queen's pawn game. Pillsbury was actually, shall we say, a thought leader in the queen's pawn game. In the late 1800s, many of the players were focused very much on the king pawn game, and Pillsbury brought a new life, new ideas into how to play with the queen's gambit. And this is precisely the idea because Pillsbury wanted more complexity, more pieces on the board. And typically, you'll find in a queen's pawn game, it takes a bit more time for the pieces to get into conflict, so they don't trade off as quickly. Whereas the king pawn game can get very open very quickly, which can lead to a lot of trades. Pillsbury wanted very complex positions. So if you want highly complex positions, then the mainline queen's gambit can certainly be beneficial. So here we get the Queen's Gambit declined. We've seen this many a time in this book. And now we see the basic developments with this pin, as we've seen to the prior situations. And now, of course, the opponent plays bishop to e7, pawn to e3. And now we simply get castles, knight f3, all very simple development, nothing complex. And then, as we've seen before, black plays this move here of b6. The point of b6 is, of course, to solve the issue of development. This light squared bishop is what they're trying to get around. So Pillsbury doesn't focus on anything fancy. He plays bishop to d3, getting his bishop onto the diagonal. We've seen earlier ideas like rook to c1 or the queen moving, but here this makes a lot of sense just to finish off this mobilization in this case. So bishop to b7, and now Pillsbury trades. The point of this is leaving black with an interesting problem. Black should take with a knight so that their bishop is at its best. The problem that the opponent then has is that white will, with time, set up the break of e4, taking over the center. And that central dominance is uncomfortable, but it's certainly the path that black should have followed. Now, when they captured with this pawn on d5, we can very much say that the pawn structure is fixed for the next 10 to 15 moves. And what's important is here with this platform, we can see that white is doing quite well from a central point of view. Since this pawn now is fixed on d5, it means that this is the bad bishop for black, since its own pawn is fixed in the center, limiting the bishop's ability to switch sides, limiting its ability to influence anything really on the king side at this stage. So immediately, Pillsbury uses this opportunity to spring forth and use his control of the center. If we take careful consideration, Pillsbury has a little tiny lead in time here. He has 4 pieces in the game versus just 3 from the opponent. And that's valuable for you to keep track of in your own games. How many pieces do you have in the game? How many pieces does the opponent? Because so often we get trapped in just calculating variations, forgetting to look at a little bit of strategic guidance. So here, certainly black develops and gets that parity. And now Pillsbury sets up this move of f4. And this setup of placing the knight on e5, getting this bind of these two pawns, is actually called the Pillsbury attack, named after Pillsbury for his attacking initiative that he develops in these ones, as we'll see. He gets this wonderful dominance of this square, and his opponent does not understand the danger. His opponent plays pawn c5, which is a very reasonable move here at this stage, putting pressure onto the center. And then, of course, we get castles. Pillsbury removes his king from the danger and solves so many problems. And here we get the turning moment in this game. And it might seem so strange because the turning moment is pawn to c4. This is a mistake. This is a positional blunder. But it looks good. Here, if we look carefully, black is, of course, attacking the bishop, forcing it to move. Black is also establishing very clear queenside play, where they would like to play b5, roll forward with their pawns, and establish a pass pawn. If we look on the queen side here, they've now got 3 versus 2 on the side of the board. So it's a clear, simple plan. But the center is the most important part, and black loses all pressure on the center. This is exceptionally valuable for you to pick up and understand. If we just take a close examination, this ability to trade on d4 is actually their best move. They should have traded on d4 to leave this as a hanging pawn, something they can in future target. Instead, when he pushes past, now we have a completely secure center. Pillsbury does not have to worry about the center changing. He doesn't have to worry about any dynamics in this case. So the bishop goes back. It continues its vision on this diagonal, looking at the enemy king side. So black continues their plan, a6, ignoring the danger. So let's unpack this position. Here we are, clearly now entering the middle game. Both sides have to decide how they're going to get their queen in the game, and fundamentally, what are we going to do? How do we play? We can clearly focus that here, Pillsbury would like to attack on the king side. But why? Why does he want to attack on the king side? Well, it has to do with the influence of the pieces he can bring. He's already got the knight stationed on a spectacular outpost square. Look at the presence, the pressure that this knight has under control. Then the second issue is look at the bishop. This technically is supposed to be Pillsbury's bad bishop because this pawn is fixed on a dark square, limiting that bishop's ability to influence any other side of the board. But he's ready to trade this off for a knight. And if we describe the center, we would call the center fundamentally closed, because we could even maybe call it on the brink of semi-closed, because white does have the ability, if they wish, to play through the middle with e4, but that's going to take quite a bit of labor. So at this stage, it means that play on the side is where our plans go, because neither side is really going to focus through the middle of the board. So black is beginning their operation. It's clear, it's possible. They want to play b4 and in future generate a pass pawn. They would like to play on the queen side where they have more pawns. But why the king side for Pillsbury? Because he has the bishop, he has this bishop to help, the knight, and as we will see, the queen can join in easily somewhere on this diagonal, plus there's even the capacity of the rooks to join in. What a wonderful opportunity to bring so many weapons, and let's see how Pillsbury puts this in action. The first thing he does is very instructive. Queen to f3. Now you may ask, how does that help to attack the king? Why is this important? Well, it's built on a very smart idea, which is that he wants to get the queen in, but he also wants to ensure the opponent cannot use this e4 square as an outpost. If we do a simple count, white now attacks this square 3 times with the knight, the bishop, the queen. Whereas black, if they place their knight on that square, they would attack it 1, 2 times. So he's taken that little bit of extra control of the center, and that's a great tip to you. Look at the center. All the time, the center matters. Throughout chess, the center matters. And look at the center and try and examine how much control do you have? How much control does your opponent have? One of the big questions is, do you have any squares you can use, put a piece on? We see that here from white. This knight is the best minor piece on the board. And we have to take careful consideration that certainly here, Black cannot trade because white has two good captures. The easiest one to understand would be pawn takes, and then immediately this d5 is in trouble. The kingside is left barren without support, so it is certainly not a move. Black thinks everything is fine. I have no weaknesses on the kingside. I have plenty pieces to protect. They play b5. Okay, how would you attack here? What would you do? Let's stop and think, like a game situation. You're on the clock. You're busy thinking. Your opponent has a clear plan. They want to push up to b4. Should we try and stop this with a3? Should we try and play through the middle with e4? No, we need to focus on that king side. It's ready for the attack. And yes, Pillsbury's led us on the path. Queen h3. We are setting up this attack on h7. And here, as we will see, is an exceptionally difficult position for his opponent. Let's talk about the threat. First and foremost, what is Pillsbury threatening? If Pillsbury had the move, how would he conduct himself? What would he do? And here we see the important moment. He wants to remove the defenders. The bishop and the queen will checkmate if the knights are removed. We cannot just take this knight because they would capture back with their knight. That is why Pillsbury's opponent felt very secure originally that he didn't have to worry about the attack on the king. So let's unpack. Pillsbury, of course, would first destroy this defender. What a wonderful understanding of the theme destroying the defender. Knight takes on d7. They would take back with, let's say, the queen. And then what? Because now he's going to trade queens. Aha, we have this wonderful combo. Let's take a look. Let's say the opponent in this position played a random move, a5. Now we see this move, knight takes d7. We're just trying to understand it. Queen takes d7. Of course, if the knight took back, thank you, we would checkmate. Now queen takes, and I want you to remember this wonderful pattern. We insert bishop takes h7 check. Spectacular. The point being that if the knight were to capture on h7, we take their queen. And if they move their king to h8, we of course move our bishop back to f5 with a discovered check and winning the queen. Spectacular. What a wonderful demonstration of using these opportunities. So, okay, we can see that this is not a threat to be ignored. In the game, they played pawn to g6. But what happens if they play h6, such a standard move? Go back, game one. Game one, go back to game one. Sign up, by the way, to the notes that I provide. Join the mailing list, and I will send you the notes from every single game so that you can turn them into a real learning experience to grow your understanding. h6, this is the same pattern from game one, but the colors were flipped. Black used the opportunity to sacrifice on h6, and that is the same pattern. Bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes. Now this is crushing. Why? Because in the simplest of terms, the rook wants to join in and finish off the checkmate. If they play knight e4, no problem. We keep up the same attack. There are too many pieces coming for the black king. Yes, he's stopped the bishop joining in, but now there's a simple threat. We're going check anyway, followed by queen checkmate. Because if the knight takes, we're going to checkmate them. If he tries to run in with his knights, no problem. We have more pieces. Rook h3. He cannot stop checkmate. We will get checkmate on h8. We have too many weapons coming for this side of the board. And once again, we see the power of a rook when it's able to join in on the attack. Black also has a rook that's stationed here, but it's merely a spectator, a statue, unable to provide support in this position. Very, very instructive. So h6 is not playable. So he correctly plays pawn to g6. And I do want to just unpack. If you were to try and simplify, as we looked at earlier, knight takes here is very poor because we can simply capture back in whatever way we want. I would say d takes is good. The detail is now with the bishop combining onto the square, the threats of checkmate. There's just way, way too many problems in this case, and he will lose in quick, quick time. So the decision here is to play pawn g6. Let's unpack and learn. Now we go back to those earlier days, the earlier examples that we saw in this book of attacking the weak dark squares. We now have those holes, and that becomes part of the story of what we're going to unpack and recognize in this position. So Okay, with this attack on these squares, we now would like to occupy those holes. But Pillsbury shows another valuable tool that we can look and learn. We would actually like to remove all of that pawn cover from the enemy king. How do we do that? What weapons can we use? And here we see this wonderful idea, f5, this pawn break. A wonderful weapon to open up this position. And this works superbly well here because the opponent's king now is under so much stress. But Black thinks he has time. Black thinks, let me attack this knight, because Pillsbury has to move the knight. I'm attacking the knight. That's not true. Because remember, we play for checkmate. And here we have a wonderful example of that presence that Pillsbury demonstrates. Let's attack the enemy kingside. So pawn takes g6, tearing the king open. Let's unpack. If the opponent took the knight, they did not. As we see, they calculated their opponent was smart. Marco was smart here because I want you to think, how would you finish off? If you were playing here with the white pieces, what would you do? How would you attack? And the clear job is destroy the defenders. Remove those knights from this situation. So yes, rook takes f6 is winning. You could also play bishop takes, but this is very pretty because now the point is, if the knight captures back, the bishop takes back, and now, oh, but he of course cannot take with the h-pawn. That would be checkmate. If he takes with the f-pawn, it looks like he's survived, that there's no problems. Ah, and we see Pillsbury's idea. Check, check, controlling all these squares. Absolutely spectacular because now the rook moves here, queen takes f7, and we have a checkmate in this position. Absolutely wonderful for us to see. So he cannot touch the knight. There is too much coming through. By the way, yes, by all means, you certainly could play bishop takes f6 and win with the same pattern and the same sort of theme. So in this case, the knight is not touchable. He has to take back. So he takes back with this pawn, the h-pawn. We've already seen taking back with the f-pawn is not a good idea. Queen to e6. Also, generally in chess, you should, if you have a choice to take with pawns, you should try and take towards the center. That way you increase your control of the middle of the board, if it's possible. In the opening, we say take out of the center to accelerate your development, but this is certainly not an opening. Well, how should we attack? What should we do? How do we continue? I mean, our knight is attacked. Well, here we can see Pillsbury in his spectacular calculation. He spends time, he calculates, and he finds a wonderful follow-on in this position. But what he goes with is a simple, quiet, strong move. Queen h4. Absolutely superb. The idea and the intention is what? Let's unpack. Because here, if the opponent plays, as we'll have a look, pawn takes c3, well, this is what he decided to play in the game. Now Pillsbury calmly, clearly, destroys the defender, undermines these squares. This is so very important because now we see the issue. We see that he established a pin. So very clever in this case. And once again, the opponent plays queen takes d7. And now, thank you very much. We have already seen the successful attacking pattern that we are looking for in this case. And this is the crucial theme. Rook takes f6. Spectacular. Why are we sacrificing the rook? Because the bishop here is a better attacking weapon than the rook. We would like to get the bishop onto the square to attack the dark squares, get that checkmate. Remember, go through some of the earlier examples of Lolly's mates. Here it appears again. The bishop would get on f6, the queen would go to h6, or in this case, straight to h8. A spectacular theme. So, black is left with a problem. They have no choice. They cannot take that piece. And their king side is in tatters. They're scraping desperately to try and survive. He tries to play a5. Now, this might seem very strange, but it's a good plan, a good idea. In desperation, he is trying to get his rook involved to help defend his king. Very reasonable. Nothing wrong with this idea. Well, what should we do in this case? How should we continue? And this is where Pillsbury focuses on the simple and clear opportunities. We have got the rook, the bishop, the queen involved, and now we can bring in so many weapons, which is so very important. what would you do here? There's actually many wins. So put this in the chat below. What win would you put in? How would you go ahead? Let's talk. Let's unpack the different approaches, because Pillsbury built a brilliant position here. So many opportunities. Rook A to F1. Great theme for you to remember. Try to bring in as many pieces as possible to the attack. And this is brilliant. He finds his worst place piece, the rook, and he gives it a job, doubling the rooks. But now you might ask, well, rook A6, how does this stop anything? And the idea from Pillsbury is clear. He can tear open the enemy kingside with bishop takes g6. And the point is that now after pawn takes, we simply have rook takes f8 check. And this is actually spectacular because Pillsbury now has a forced mate in 7 moves that he calculates in this one. Perfect chess from here. Bishop takes f8. What forced mate? But it looks like we've thrown it all away. How should we attack? What are we going to do in this position? Well, yes, remember the theme that we've discussed before? That's in the notes. For so many of these lessons, you've got to focus on number 1, checks, then captures, and then simple threats. And here, first and foremost, we've got to look at all those checks. So what would you do in this case? How would you continue? Yes, rook takes f8 check. This is crushing in this position because now the king has to capture back. Queen to h8 check, absolutely brilliant. Then the opponent's king now has to run up to f7. We go check, and doesn't matter where they move. They're going to be mated shortly. In this game situation, they played, of course, if they go to e8, we go queen g8 mate. And if they go to e6, we play queen g6 mate. So they had to play f8, and now after queen takes, there is no way for them to stop the very simple bishop check, queen here, checkmate. What a spectacular win from Pillsbury. 26 moves and a brilliant kingside attack that we can learn so much from. And I think if we surmise some of the big themes here, number 1 was that wonderful control of the center. And I do want you to see that pawn push here with c4, it really was not a bad plan by black. Unfortunately, they were against Pillsbury, who was a great attacker. And he used that stable platform of good control of the center and a stable center to launch that kingside attack. And that's very valuable for you to remember that generally, if you want to attack on the side, the center needs to be stable. And this was a mistake from black, allowing the center to be fixed in such a stable fashion. They needed more pressure on the center. But let's look from Pillsbury's play. Very important, the quantity of pieces he brought in. That wonderful idea of the knight on e5 is such a strong outpost in this case. So very powerful just for you to remember and understand. That platform then it provided when the knight arrived here. Black had to live under the tyranny of influence from that knight, unable to move it out. And when he reinforced it, just remember this is Pillsbury's attack, this pressure onto the square. Absolutely wonderful. And then that continued presence of bringing in the pieces, and most importantly, attacking the opponent's weakest square in their king position. And of course, that's h7, because it's only protected by the king. A wonderful performance from Pillsbury and very striking. I suggest you play through this again. I've included it in the notes as well. So please join the mailing list and I'll send them through to you. And the next game that we'll look at is actually a great demonstration of how to play against this kind of structure if you're on the black pieces and how to handle it. So do join us in the next one and we will see how to play on that queen side.